Hey guys, JH. Welcome to Practice Tee. Let me get a golf club right here. Okay. First off today, what I want to do is add to that video I did a couple of days ago where we were talking about trail foot down. What I want to explain, which I didn't before, with any type of intrinsic value, was that by keeping the trail foot down, and for one of my buddies in Tennessee, Bill Phillips, who's from MMI Golf. If you guys don't know Bill Phillips, he's got a site called MMI Golf. Go on and have a look at that. Billy's a really down-to-earth, really knowledgeable teacher. And he took from the video the other day that I did, essentially what I advocated. But I didn't give him the atomic particles of the golf swing. And he had a little difficulty with it. And that is my fault, because he can't apply the new change and the trail foot pressure down if he doesn't have the accompanying required intrinsic mechanics. And it's something that like I'm not a master of verbal explanation. And I noticed when I look at that video, and I can see how Bill had difficulty with the swing, because I just didn't tell anyone how much additional pressure that new change made by keeping that trail foot down there and feeling like we're just back footing it, how much pressure that can exert additionally to the golf swing and create spin out if you don't have a very deliberate compensator. And the deliberate compensator is that when we're set up here, the channel lock swing is a straight line attack on the ball, to the ball. The thought should be that the club always goes to the ball. It never goes to the target. This is where this golf swing differs, because the golf ball is so far back. We don't want ever feel that the club does that, because that will take the shoulder. So when we're doubling down here, we're actually accentuating more trail foot application. So in order to apply more trail foot application and keep that trail foot down, what you have to do is overemphasize the hitting out to the golf ball, not to the target. And I didn't emphasize that. And I could see what happened to Bill. Because I didn't emphasize that, and because there's so much loading back here, more loading now because we want to keep that trail heel down, this is what can happen. Here. You'll get a spin out. You know why? Because we've got all this weight here and it's actually wanting to be outside that trail vertical axis. You'll get a spin out with the shoulders if you don't overemphasize firing the club out to the ball. Now, I never mentioned that, and I can understand totally how Billy Phillips went down the road of feeling very ungainly and creating the spin out that he got with that golf swing. And he said he couldn't do it. He couldn't keep his foot down because it didn't feel right. And I know why it didn't feel right. Because the compensator wasn't there. And the compensator is overemphasizing that. If we don't have that, which is really more of a lockdown on that trail shoulder, being closed at impact, and the fact that we want our foot down, if we don't overemphasize the hit out to the golf ball that way, we're going to get that, and the weight will sort of rotate this way. It'll actually fall into that trail axis and move this way, as we saw. And Bill said, I can't do it because I don't like the feel of it. It doesn't feel right. It didn't feel right, and it couldn't feel right. I couldn't get the right feeling if I was here and I wanted to keep that foot down and I didn't go out to the target, I would be like that too, like Bill was, and I would get the ball going over here. Now that was just a communication sidetrack, in that I really just didn't I just didn't explain the over-emphasizing requirement of getting the club going this way, out to the ball. And that, as you fire it that way, guys, it drives the weight down to this vertical axis and straight down through the center of the foot and into the heel, and you'll be like that. You won't be like that. And I can understand Bill completely when he said it didn't feel right and he couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, and I wouldn't want to do it if I had that feeling there. And the other thing was that if you're going to, and what happens, guys, when you're concentrating on something new, you lose sight of the other parts of the protocol. Now we're trying here to keep the foot down. Now that's our major, neural emphasis. But by doing that, a lot of the other things can fall out. And what happened with Bill, when I saw him setting up to the ball, and totally understandable. When he was setting up here, he was going here, and he was unweighting, but he was still too open here with that foot. He needs to bring this foot up, and he needs to back cock. He had no back cock in the golf swing. None. Now, by having no back cock in it here, no closed shoulders at address, he's taken away the normal emphasis that you get bodily to have the club track into out from closed shoulders. If you have your shoulders open or square here at address, which Billy did, because he was concentrating so much on this here, this aspect, and the other parts of the protocol weren't in there. Now that can happen, guys, and that's just totally understandable, and it can happen. And if it can happen to someone like Billy Phillips, who really knows the golf swing inside out, if it can happen to him, then it can be really difficult for players that don't have the analytical skills that Bill has. And so for him to struggle with it, I had to come and do this video today and explain that the reason that Bill struggled with it was because I didn't explain it well enough. And of course he was way too square here. At the end of the day, guys, you've got to still put the protocol in. And the protocol is back cock here, 5 o'clock nose, and then we're going to stay on that back foot. There we are, that's perfect. See here? Now the reason that happens, guys, the reason you get that there is because that this lead shoulder is a blocker. As we fire out there, that lead shoulder is blocking the shoulder girdle from going and from spinning. But it's very hard to get that to happen. Very hard to get that to happen if you're not pre-closed. If you're not pre-closed at, the guys were going to mow this for me. Been raining all night. The grass is wet. So, and this is what can happen, guys. This is how you can get sidetracked. And I should have alluded to the fact that you can get sidetracked when you're working on a new particle of the channel lock protocol, and a very important particle and a very different particle and one that's going to feel entirely different. Billy was saying it doesn't feel right, and I can't do it because it doesn't feel right. Well, it didn't feel right because I didn't explain how you have to set that new particle in train. So everything is exactly the same. We've got a back cock here. We've got to have 5 o'clock nose, and then we've got to, before we take the club away, we've got to feel pressure in the heel. And there it is, guys. And look at this. So for my buddy, my friend, as we say in Australia, my China plate, my mate. Yeah, sorry, Billy, to send you down that side track like that. My fault entirely. And a couple of other guys, buddies of mine, said that they went out the next day and they were getting spins because they were doing exactly what Billy was doing. And everybody would do that because they weren't advised to do anything differently. So because we've got such a radical new particle in the swing, we have to have a compensator for it. And the compensator is extra emphasis on firing out there. But the point is, when you're trying to implement this new part of the protocol, all the other bits have still got to be in there. And I could see Billy, I could see the cogs turning over, and Billy's concentrating so much on this here that all this, the other part of the protocol, got forgotten. And that can happen because my other couple of buddies had it happen as well. So when we get in here and we're back here, we've got a back cock, we've got to get 5 o'clock nose, and before we take it back, guys, just feel a little bit of emphasis of that weight right down through that trail foot, and that's where it's going to stay. Now I promise you, and for my mate Billy, I can tell you right now, when you get this, my friend, you will pound the ball. That comment I made to you was, if I got hold of you and I put you in the right position, the nice feeling position, within 3 shots you'd just knock the cover off the golf ball. But I have to get you there and hold you in that position, say this is where you got to be, Bill, or anybody else. And that's one of the things with Channel Lock that I have to refine as a teaching process verbally. I have to be able to articulate the feeling of the setup, and that's hard. But when I do go commercial, I'll have all the diagrams and I'll have a lot of demonstrations. And of course, anybody that comes to the schools, I mean, they'll only be just put in position and they'll feel it. If I can get hold of any of you guys out there, and particularly Billy, if I got Billy, and the point I made about I get him to smash it in 3 shots, if I got him in the right position, say, Billy, here it is here. These are the pressure points. These are the blocking points here. You'd hammer it. He'd probably hammer it the first shot, not, you wouldn't need 3 shots. So I have to explain what I meant by those 3 shots, if I physically could get hold of you. Okay guys, so the importance is that we're going to keep that trail foot down, but we don't want to forget the rest of the protocol. So we've got a back cock, 5 o'clock nose, and hammer time. You know what's interesting, guys? What's really interesting is that now this is feeling very natural. This is feeling very natural on this trail side now. It feels like nothing's going on over here. I feel like, what was that pirate that had the one leg and had the parrot on his shoulder? That's what I feel like. I feel like that. I feel like a one-legged pirate. But I tell you, Bill Phillips, Billy, when you get this, my friend, you will hammer the ball. You just get so much more power. Because it's so much more efficient. That arm firing out there like that away from a non-rotating trail side just gives this more independence. Last, okay, we've got a back cock, 5 o'clock nose, and the last part of the protocol is to feel the weight down in that trail heel. Wow. It really is a really different feeling. I used to, in the old days when I was doing Mo Norman initially, I did get the feeling of the foot down with Mo Norman when I was here, but I was lateralising. But I did get a lot of, in the early days when I taught, I really did get a lot of solid hits, but this is more solid. So okay, we're here. We're going to stay on that trail axis, trail foot down, back cock, 5 o'clock nose, and hammer time. Jack Ham from Denver. Remember Jack? Hammer time Jack Ham from Denver. Guinness Book of Records longest hitter. He was a character. Boy, could he move at 160 mile an hour golf swing. Woo! He hit a 7-iron past my driver. Hit a driver 268 yards. Talking about a long time ago. And Jack hit a 7-iron past it. My swing speed in those days was about 110. His slow one was 150. What's this? Back in those days, guys, 268, 270 yards was a good drive. I think when Greg Norman led the stats in the US back in the 70s, late 70s, I think his average for the year was about 272. And I think Dan Pohl was about the same. So they've come a long way. They've picked up 30 yards or 40 yards. But in the old days, like a 270 yard drive, that was Nicklaus stuff. Okay, here we go. Back cock, 5 o'clock nose. Really get that weight down and stay there. It's easy. This grass is just terrible. They probably couldn't get the tractor out here today because it's so wet. Just hard hitting 5-irons out of the grass, out of the rough. Don't worry that. Yeah, guys, so that's the explanation. That was the explanation I didn't give. That was the explanation that I didn't give. And of course, when you see someone like Bill Phillips taken off on a spur the wrong way, then I certainly haven't explained as it should be. Okay, last shot. Okay, Joe, do a good job. That's as good as you can do it, James. Okay, guys, I hope that explains everything, and I hope that's an explanation for you, Billy. Okay, guys, we'll do more as the week progresses.